Now let's get to the main presentation. Each of our speakers today will have a strict 10 minutes to discuss technology they are using at their agencies for VAW counseling programs. If you have any questions, put them in the chat box during the presentation, and again, we'll answer them all at the Q&A time. Our first speaker is Sam Yamada. Sam is the Director of Program Development, Research and Quality Improvement at the Child Development Institute. She's going to talk about the platform WebEx and how she chose this option for her agency.
Good morning, everybody. I am, stop other screen sharing. Okay, yes. We just practiced how to do this, and so I am ready, and hopefully you guys will see my slides shortly. Great. So thank you so much, Joanne, for inviting me to participate in this panel. Definitely, it's a topic that obviously is very relevant these days. And I wanted to share a little bit about WebEx, but mostly about the journey at CDI and how we came about the decision to go with Cisco WebEx, which is the platform we're using currently for counseling. Our journey started a year ago when the first wave of COVID began, and the context for it, there we go. The context for it was that schools had just shut down all our services, people were asked to work from home, and we were not yet set up with the capacity to do virtual counseling in any of our programs. And so the mad rush to do research began, and as my department is the research department, I was tasked with looking at various different virtual platforms, as many agencies were doing at the time. So I started to go through all of the different platforms that existed at that time that I kind of knew about or had heard. This was an area that was not familiar to me yet. And it became quickly very overwhelming, which I'm sure many of you have also experienced in trying to figure out how to move the decision forward in your organization. So this is a few of the platforms that I started to research. And primarily I was doing research by looking on websites, trying to understand what the different aspects were to the various platforms, calling them, finding out about the different aspects. And it got to a point where I decided, you know, we really need to have some sort of a framework to decide what information is most important in considering when selecting a virtual platform for our agency. What are must-haves in terms of, for many of you, it'll be privacy and security compliance, and certain functions. What are, would be should-haves. So, we should be able to have a certain number of people in a group session. We should be able to control certain aspects of, if people can chat or not while we're doing counseling. What are could-haves and what might be would-haves. And what we ended up doing was developing a little bit of a spreadsheet, which I'll share with you sort of a little bit what the format looks like here. And this is very messy, but it's sort of the main document that we worked at. I basically put the different platform names that we were looking into on one column, and I don't know if people can see that. And then across the top, just started to put some of the things we were considering in terms of the functionality. So we knew we needed functionality for one-to-one counseling. We have a number of group programs. So I wanted to know, could you have multiple people on the screen? How many could you have where you could see on the screen at once, because you don't want clients off the screen if you're having a group session? Can you screen share so I could show you different things? And then thinking more broadly about the functionality for the organization, if we're going to go with a platform for our counseling, can we go with the same platform for corporate functions? Like if we wanted to do a webinar or we wanted to just have internal team meetings, because of course we don't want staff to have to learn a whole bunch of different platforms for different functions. We wanted to know the security about messaging, if those are encrypted. We were curious about some of the, nice bells and whistles. Are there appointment reminders embedded in them? Can you share secure documents, which is actually a pretty important function when everybody went remote, because for us, we don't share documents necessarily by email. So we wanted to figure out how we could do that. Consent forms, other features, of course, that we wanted to look at were the privacy and security stuff. So what we ended up doing is working with our privacy officer. So she has, her position is that she knows a lot about the privacy legislation and figured out what were sort of the key aspects to have for us. And so we need to be HIPAA compliant, but there are all these other different compliances. If you start looking into this, it gets complicated. Compliance in the US has a certain kind of grading, compliance in Europe has a certain kind of grading. And so I would just go through and mark down the information I had in terms of whether it met HIPAA requirements, whether it was encrypted and at what level, all these sort of tech things. So you can ask your tech people to help you, because this is stuff that they understand, and they can, it's kind of a collaborative thing. We wanted to have certain things like being able to prevent clients from recording the session, make sure that if we're recording things, where is the patient data stored? Can we prevent, we work a lot with children in our programming, so can we control chatting while a meeting is going on? We don't necessarily want to have clients chatting with one another that the counselor is not aware of, those types of functions. So it was a lot of consulting very quickly with the clinical team in terms of help us to understand what counseling actually looks like. What are the things you really need to have to make sure that the process is as engaging and also as safe as possible for the client? And then sort of from an infrastructure privacy standpoint, what do we need? From the user experience, we wanted to know which browsers were supported, what bandwidth was required. A lot of families didn't have access to very good bandwidth, and so we didn't want them to become frustrated. Do you need to download anything? So thinking about that, and then of course thinking about the business details, which actually is, for us, was very important. We wanted to know, are we going to have support 24/7 if our clinicians have trouble getting on? Is there an implementation team that's going to come and train our staff on how to use it? We're not just going to have to figure it out on our own. How long does it take to implement? So in the end, we really went through these main kind of areas of consideration. What do we need, which we consulted very closely with our clinical team. The privacy and security compliance, we worked with our privacy officer. What were the support availabilities in terms of implementation? What infrastructure was needed in terms of bandwidth, the user experience, and of course the cost. In the end, we ended up selecting Cisco WebEx. And a lot of the reasoning for that was, in part, Zoom was really taking off at the time, like a lot. And they were so bombarded with calls that I actually had a lot of trouble getting a call back from their service department, because it was right at the start of the pandemic and they were so busy. I was aware of Zoom Healthcare, but I didn't know a lot about it. And they were still building really quickly the security aspects of their platform, because it was right at the start. Now the situation is different. So now if I were to do this assessment with the platforms, it would look quite different. Cisco, we have actually a previous relationship with Cisco, so that was one of the main factors. We were able to negotiate pricing with them that worked for us, and they seemed to be the best solution for the needs of our organization broadly. So not just looking at the needs of our VAW services, but the needs of all of our other mental health care services, our corporate functions, our educational functions, those things. Cisco met our security and compliance requirements, and then had sort of all the things that we needed. Some of the challenges with Cisco, it's a pretty sophisticated platform. And the nice thing is we were able to create one link for non-clinical functions and one link for clinical functions. And so that way we could prevent or minimize corporate, the accidental click where you go to the wrong space, and like no non-clinical staff would have access to the clinical portals. So we were really focusing on that. It has a pretty high bandwidth demand. And so at times it can be quite a drain if somebody doesn't have really fast internet. The interface is not as easy necessarily to navigate as Zoom is, I would say. It's a bit more complex. And yet it has more functions in terms of the ability to put polls in really easily, the ability to do whiteboarding, what you can control. So it's one of those things that's really designed originally, I think, more for a corporate setting. But it seems to be meeting the needs. And at some point, we just had to make a decision. That was one of the hardest things is I don't think there's necessarily a perfect solution, but it was the best solution for us at the time. And so in closing, my tips would be obviously when selecting a platform to consider a lot of collaboration. So working with your IT teams, working with the privacy folks, obviously working with the clinical team, thinking broadly about the utility, because the worst thing is to get onto a virtual platform and then find out that it's not what you need and then have to get onto a different virtual platform. We didn't want that experience, which is why we took a long time making our decision. It was a tough kind of decision because we were so careful in our selection. It meant that clients weren't receiving video conferencing counseling for quite some time. They were doing counseling over the phone. And we sort of had to wait before we implemented, but we're pretty confident now that our decision means that this is the platform that we'll go with during COVID as well as after COVID is done. And I wanted to just point you towards some other resources that the Center of Excellence for Child and Youth Mental Health also has quite a few references or resources on their website about virtual counseling, if that's of any use to you. And that's it.
Thank you, Sam. So lots of great considerations and things to think about. If you have any questions for Sam, please put them in the chat box. And we're going to go to our next speaker. Shireen Mcfarland is the Program Manager for Violence Against Women at Catholic Family Services of Toronto, and she'll be speaking about the platform On Call that is used at her agency.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. This is probably a conversation long time coming in terms of, what platforms and how do we serve everyone, given that we're working from home and offsite. So our agency, which I would probably describe as maybe a medium to small, medium to large, small to medium agency. And we do primarily counseling, like that's mostly what we do. We have groups as well that we run. And in the process of transitioning to providing services, we were able to transition fairly quickly by using the service On Call. It's a virtual software suited for healthcare needs. You can just to the next slide. So basically for healthcare clinics and enterprises. And so we were able to kind of transition fairly quickly by going to using laptops, sending all our staff home to be able to use this software to provide counseling services online and virtually. So we'll go to the next slide. So I just want to talk about some of the features. Now, when we transitioned, On Call had some features, but over the year, they have been quickly upgrading their resources and features. So, for example, when we started to use On Call, they were using their own software to provide the video conferencing platform. But over the time, they actually, as you can see there, connected with Zoom. So now what happens is that they are using a Zoom enabled platform, which gives you the features of Zoom in their secure platform. So you're able to set up appointments. You can, have your name. You can save a roster of all the clients that you have with their name and information. Each client will set up their own account, which it's password protected. So every time that they connect with your service, they're going into a password protected platform, then that looks like Zoom. So it's fairly cool now in terms of the process of things. So, and once you set up the appointment, it sends reminders. So you can set up the appointment, and maybe an hour, I think it's an hour or so before, they get a reminder about the appointment that was set up. They have customizable features of brand control. So you can actually have a level of the account where you can actually put on your own logo and make it look like your agency in terms of how it's presented in format. And so they give you that ability to offer those customizable pieces so that when people interface with the platform, they interface with your own brand. So that's an option that they offer. And so you can also configure, so you can add pages, you can add forms, you can add documents to their platform that you may use on a regular basis, so that it's easier to maybe send to your clients if you have any documents that you would like to send to your clients. I spoke about the Zoom enabled, which actually became something that happened after maybe 6 months in, which really helped the group function, being able to provide group services and be able to do all the group support. So that was really, and it became a little bit more stable. So in the interaction of the virtual piece, sometimes it wasn't as stable in regards to interacting with the client, but after Zoom it became a lot more stable and usable. It is a secure, it is HIPAA, it's compliant, fully compliant, and it's a secure platform. As I said, it's password protected. So to get into your session, you have to have a password and connect that way. So clients will set up an account and be able to connect in that way. They have made it accessible on multiple devices. So you can get it, they could access on the phone, like view it on the phone, or they can access it on a computer and all the tablets. So they do have that capacity so that people can be able to connect to the platform through those different devices. The other piece that is important to note is not only do you have a secure platform for the virtual piece, like in terms of video, but they also offer a phone option too. So if you're doing services by the phone, you can also do calls through on call as well to provide a service, which would offer that level of security, HIPAA compliant security, if you use it via the phone. And surveys of women in VAW sector, what we found is a lot of them are still more comfortable receiving services via the phone, but being able to provide it through a secure platform is also very helpful. They have 24-hour 7 days a week tech support for both patients and providers. So if you're having any issues, there's some tech support for you that you can call and be able to receive some support. Is the next page? So we talked about group sessions. So we hold a few groups, and what just like you would be adding a group, they all get an account and a secure pathway into the group session. And so you can hold group sessions. I think there was a limit of like 15 in the group, but they're readily increasing that number in terms of the number of persons that can attend a group. The features that also are present is that you can do session notes in in on-call, right? So you can actually, for each client, you can have their own session notes, write your notes, and they hold it. One of the things you, as Samantha, might consider, depending on your agency, is where you want to hold that data, because this would be a third-party data holding your information. So that's something that you might want to consider. It is an option. You don't have to, but it's there for you if you choose to keep your notes on the system. They offer also the option of receiving payments through the service, right? So you can actually request the payment and get paid through the service. And so it depends on, again, the level of account. I think in the basic you have it, so you can actually turn it on or turn it off if you choose to use it or not. So that's also something that is, you know, beneficial if you're thinking about how to receive payments. Talked about their own password account. Clients have their own password protected account. So that's what they sign on to when they're coming into your session. Again, I think you can also request analytics. So over the time that you are using the platform, they'll tell you how many sessions, how many drop call, you know, all of those pieces in regards to session information, and usage around the platform is available to you. So that you can get some stats in terms of, and for like agencies, that would be helpful. So we have a number of stats. At the end of the year, they gave us a nice kind of summary of, you know, how many calls were used, how many video versus phone, et cetera, et cetera. It was a nice way to kind of get an idea of how useful and how our staff was using the platform. So there's that option as well. It's been a very good process so far in regards to using on-call. Again, they have been in the process of upgrading very quickly as they go along. And so a lot of new features have come out over the past year in regards to, you know, and it's mostly because of the people using and say, hey, how about this? And how about that? Can you do this? And so they've been steadily, you know, improving and making it nimble enough for agencies to use the platform. So that's basically on call. We did have some struggle again. We did have some struggle in the beginning, and this is just a few of the downfalls to on-call, is that some of the tech, as we at the beginning, wasn't good in terms of, and I don't know all the technical pieces, but in terms of streaming and holding the virtual feature. But as I said, as Zoom kind of took over, and Zoom enabled, that kind of stabilized. I believe On-Call is a fairly small agency, believe it or not. So, you know, sometimes tech support was just a little bit, even though they're available 24/7, because they're, I think, in general, fairly small company. Sometimes it was difficult to get through, or, you know, once you're using it and in the middle of a session, you know, trying to get tech support to get through, you know, it can be a little bit nerve-wracking. But overall, it's a fairly decent platform to use, easy to use. I think most clients that I've worked with didn't have much trouble setting up their on-call account password, getting in, and being able to use it from different devices. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So it is on call, but as I said, they used to have their own virtual technology, but then a few months in, 6 months in, they joined with Zoom so that their virtual, the way it shows is they're using the virtual, they're using Zoom platform. So much what you see today is what you would see when you enter into on-call. But they do have all their other features that they use to provide service. So that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Shireen. Great overview of a program that I personally wasn't familiar with, but it's got lots of great features for people to consider for sure. So our third speaker is Carla Neto, and she's the Community Program Manager at Women's Habitat. Carla will speak about her agency's use of Zoom.
Hey, hi, good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for the opportunity. Samantha and Shireen, I have learned a lot, and I'm almost changing my mind, but but here it goes. So next slide, please. So as you know, and I think Samantha talked about it a little bit, here comes the pandemic, and for those of you who don't know, Women's Habitat has two distinct services. We have the shelter service, which continue to support women in a modified way, but women are still living in the shelter, residing in the shelter. And so the in-person, with the physical distancing services were still happening. Our outreach center, which is the one that I manage, the outreach services, we basically, staff started working from home, and we were not prepared at all. We were not prepared organizationally. We didn't have the laptops, the resources that the staff needed to continue to support the women. So that became like the focus of our kind of journey. How do we get the technology? How do we get staff to continue to provide supports? And so we also started thinking about later on, because as 6 months came and women are like, so when are we coming back? Are we doing anything? So we started thinking about how do we migrate the in-person services and programming to a virtual platform, and then which platform do we use? So we went through all those thinking and thoughts and processes. And this is when we began to really realize we need to go into this digital transformation, because we were not prepared, and we don't see life going back to how it was before. So we looked at assessing our own online readiness. Of course, we needed to subscribe to something. We needed to look at our IT capacity. And you're right, Samantha, when you said that it is a collaborative process. So I really relied a lot on my colleague whose portfolio includes IT, just to ask questions about, there's simple questions that I didn't even know. So depending on whatever platform, is it compatible with our own server? I had no idea what questions to even ask. But in any case, my colleague came through. So slowly I began to understand a little bit more. But we also needed to know about, what about the clients? I mean, is it safe for the clients? Some of our clients are actually a great number of our clients are still living with their abusive partners. How are they going to participate in virtual programming or services? Do they even have access to equipment and internet services? Are they digitally literate? Do they know what to do? And some of you will remember me asking these questions and raising these concerns during our counseling network meetings. So so then we were looking also at staff. Oh my goodness, can our staff be able to engage in serving virtually now? Do they have enough knowledge to be able to train or support the clients? Next slide, please. So we picked Zoom because many of us in the management team were already using Zoom to attend meetings in the sector. I had some experience with WebEx, but WebEx, to be honest with you, scared the hell out of me. It just looked too corporate. It looked a little bit challenging. Our staff were also, some of them were using, actually one was using WebEx, but most of them had access to Zoom. When we did our online readiness, that included a survey to clients. And clients, the majority, I would say over 80%, close to 90% of clients were already familiar with Zoom. And so that Zoom became kind of the, well, maybe it's the way to go because we're starting. And obviously, what we had to do, because all of the concerns that I raised didn't go away, just like that, we needed to have the resources to be able to, of course, subscribe to whatever platform, to train our staff, to support the women, to ensure that women had access to the equipment and so on. So we applied for a grant through Toronto Community Foundation to migrate into a virtual platform so that we could continue to support the clients. And that's why we call it Together Virtually. It's the project. The name of the project is Together Virtually. And so we have been in this journey trying to figure out things still. We're not there yet by any means. So Zoom looked quite, I would say, friendly to use. The interface was actually friendly. WebEx scared the hell out of me. Like I said, I had not heard of on-call until Shireen mentioned. And when we looked at the programs that we want to migrate, Zoom seemed to be conducive to what we wanted to do, right? But like I said, it's still a work in progress. We're learning a lot. One of the things that made me consider Zoom it was the rep. Unlike you, when I email or when I call, Mike is there, right? We are on the first name basis, very, very accessible. There is a lot of information that is already provided, and Zoom has a lot of information that you can access. Of course, the scary part about Zoom is because it's still new to us in terms of the way we work, and obviously there's no platform that is going to make me feel secure, and there is always a lack of control attached to it. And so when I think about the con is that as technology advances, so does hackers and people who are just in there to try to wreak havoc. And also because we work with women who are vulnerable and have been victimized. So there's always that fear that someone will try to, break into our counseling sessions or our group sessions and so on. Next, please. So in terms of the privacy laws, these are all the privacy laws that Zoom is compliant with. And I just put there the definition just because that was another thing. So which one are we supposed to be compliant, and why this and why not that? Next, please. And what I found is that if you sign a business associated agreement with Zoom, they can then, on the back end, they can modify settings. They can ensure that like if you talk to them about, well, I have this concern about privacy, I have that concern about security, there are things they can do in the back end, right, that you wouldn't be able to do if you didn't have an account with them, like a business account with them. And just as an example, for if you are sorry, just moving this. For example, if you enable the PHI compliance, these are some of the things that will happen. So the cloud recording is disabled, right? Unless you ask them to do it, right? There is in-meeting chats cannot be copied or saved, which is great because sometimes you don't want those chats to be ending up in somewhere, in environments or conversations that are not meant to. So there are some things that you will have to connect with your rep and ask questions about. I'm still learning. I am still very much open as well. I get it. You don't want to be jumping from platform to platform, but so far Zoom has provided me with the confidence that we are going to be able to use to the best of our ability. I really like most of the features that we have that are kind of conducive to some of the activities we want to do, like the chat and my favorite one is the polling. Actually, can you go to the next slide, please? Yeah, the chat and the polling. So these are some of the features that we thought easy enough to use. You know, clients may not struggle to because a lot of our clients are not digitally literate. So we have to make sure that we are providing them with something that is familiar, something that is easy to learn. We're still building our staff capacity. In fact, we have engaged a company that is going to be providing training, Zoom one-on-one for the staff. We are basically trying to figure out in terms of the other pieces, because it's not just the technology, it's also about the program development piece of it, right? So having someone who has the tech knowledge, but also having someone who may come with a lot of creativity around, you know what, this is also something that you can do using Zoom. So sometimes I run it by Mike. Okay, so I was thinking about this activity and that activity. Is it possible? And you'll go away and you come back. Yeah, it is possible if you do this and that. So my suggestion is speak to your rep, ask as many questions, and a good rep is going to be available, is going to be willing to answer every question that you have, because this is a commitment you're making in terms, not just financial, of course, but it's in terms of ensuring that the services and programming that you are providing to your clients are being done in an effective and safe and productive way. Of course, we are going to evaluate to see how it works. We are, like I said, we are in the beginning stages, and I will keep you guys appraised as our progress. So that is it for me. And I don't know if I used my 10 minutes, but I really tried.
Carla, you did great. So thank you so much for the discussion of Zoom. I know that that's really common. In a recent survey that we did, Zoom was a very popular platform, so that's really helpful. I'm going to go to the question and answer period now of the webinar. So you're most welcome to turn on your cameras if you want, but please stay muted unless you're on the phone. So if you're on the phone and you want to ask a question, you can use *6 to unmute yourself. And let's start by just taking a couple of moments to pause and see if there are any questions coming in by phone. Okay. So if you're on the phone and a question comes up to you at a later point, when we have a break between questions, just interrupt and we can definitely answer your question at that point. So here are some questions that are coming from the chat. This is a general question for the speaker. So this is for everyone, related to the use of interpreters with your virtual platforms. Do some of you use interpreters when offering virtual services? And if so, how does your platform work when interpreters are needed, both for working with individuals and in a group? So maybe I'll ask Shireen to start with that question.
You mean me, Shireen?
Yes. Oh, sorry, Shireen. I'm sorry.
Okay. So in terms of interpreters for the virtual platforms, again, they would be invited, and we definitely have to have all the consents form signed for those particular meetings. But for virtual, it would be like an invitation virtually, and because we have the password, they'd have to kind of sign in to get into the meeting. I think, you know, some of our staff have been very creative around even using the phone if it's particularly, you know, language, like not sign language is one of the things we haven't figured out. And I've been in conversation with one agency. It's just kind of even sign language interpreting, which has been kind of a challenge in trying to figure out how to do that adequately. But in regards to the virtual, I think we haven't necessarily had any concerns around that. It's just kind of getting the same consents and inviting them into the virtual space to do the interpreting.
Yeah, that's a great question because as we continue to engage right now, our staff are using the phone. Obviously, they're using WhatsApp because some of the clients want to be able to see their faces, or some of the clients that have already been working with us for a long time, they want to be able. And with WhatsApp now, you can have more than one person speaking. So we haven't had any issues with interpretation yet, but it's something we already considered. And like Shireen, absolutely, all the confidentiality processes need to be looked at. Security in terms of having a password, because I think one of the things we probably will have to do now is to connect. For example, we use Barbara Schleifer interpretation services. So it's to really connect with Barbara Schleifer to look at how are the interpreters conducting their service now, because if there is no in-person interpretation, I'm assuming that Barbara Schleifer is also looking at how to best support the clients and the organizations that use their service. And for sign language, I would say probably the virtual platforms would be appropriate. I don't know. It's also something that we need to be really researching around accessibility, right? Yeah.
Samantha, Sam, is there anything in terms of WebEx that you're aware of that specifically is conducive to the use of interpreters?
Not yet. I think that it would be similar situations to what Carla and Shireen have already mentioned. The only other thing that I would consider are just the standards around working, and I know you guys are going to talk about this in future webinars, but developing a set of standards or practice standards for doing virtual counseling in general. So things like making sure that it's a private space, like I'm doing it in a room. It's not like my husband's walking around behind me, or I have earphones on to maintain privacy. And you would expect that the interpreter would also abide by the standards that the organization has for that type of practice. I read in like a really geeky tech journal that Cisco or some other organizations are working towards real-time interpretation, like sort of like Google Translate, but in real time, but it's not been implemented yet. So I think there are technologies that are working towards those things, but they're not there yet.
I think it's such a complex thing as well, because we also need to look at literacy, right? If we are to be using technology that requires that someone is literate, that someone knows how to write and type and so on. So this is, I would say, it's a journey where we are going to constantly learn, and it's also requiring that these tech companies step up their game, because a lot of what we are thinking about, we didn't think about 2 years ago, because we didn't think that we were going to be in this situation. So it is, I think it's going to really push organizations and companies to think outside the box and to enhance our processes. And I think service provision will look very different, right? Mm-hmm. Today, we're talking about internet and laptops and computers being a basic need, right, for people, for clients. So yeah, it's a very interesting time we're living. There is a question about,
There's a
sorry.
question, sorry. There was a question to all the presenters, and this was asking, is there a way to stop or disable the print screen function? The question, has this come up for you, or do you conduct the sessions with cameras off? Interesting question. So maybe we'll start with Sam, whether that's something that you're aware of at your organization, and then we'll go to Shireen, and then we'll go to Carla. So it's about stopping or disabling print screen.
Again, within the technology, I think the thing that's tricky is that if you have somebody who's tech savvy enough, they will know how to just screen capture. And so there's always going to be a risk. And in that sense, that's where the practices around the use of virtual technology are really important to clarify. So understanding the risks and benefits of consenting to virtual therapy, understanding what the expectations are for clients in terms of not doing screen captures, not doing, anything that would jeopardize the confidentiality and privacy of the sessions. And so I think that's where the two things have to be, you sort of have to marry them. The technology piece is one, but then the reality, as Carla mentioned, is you can only control so much. And so there would be a set of expectations for both the clients and any counselors or staff as well around what's permitted and what's not permitted. Typically, I believe that generally our clients are encouraged to keep their cameras on if they're comfortable, but it varies from session to session.
Yeah, so in regards to, I think even the print screen, I think there's only so much we can control. I don't think we can control a person's computer from where we are. And so, we have no control. I don't think any service or platform would be able to disable print screen from the client's point of view. So one of the things that I think is that we've learned is that we constantly have to check in with the client and check in with around their safety, what is appropriate for them, being able to ensure that they are in a safe space when they are, talking with us and interacting with us. And so I think there's a lot of, reminding and talking through those pieces with the client to make sure that we're ensuring their safety while we're engaging. And I think, as I said, some of our clients are very comfortable on the phone where they don't have all of those different tech issues. They go for a walk and they just take up their phone and they're on session and then you have clients who are comfortable with using the video. So again, I think we have to constantly be checking in, especially with women we serve, around their safety and what works for them, and being able to flex based on what works for them.
Well, I would agree with Shireen. I think it's the important thing for us to remember is that even if we were not using technology, we would still have expectations that safety and security is everyone's responsibility. We wouldn't, be okay with clients coming into a group session, for example, and videotaping or taking pictures or voice recording. So I think those are all conversations that we have within the context of risk management and safety planning for everyone. We have begun to develop policies just in procedures, just as a reminder again for clients and for staff that there's some things that we need to observe and some things that we need to be responsible for. I think that there is so much we can do around avoiding risk or preventing risk. I mean, we'll do whatever we need to do, but I don't think that the print screen is something that we are going to avoid.
Yeah. And Carla, thanks for bringing that up around safety and policies and procedures. We'll be speaking about that on the next webinar in more depth. So hopefully we'll be able to dive into that and get more information about that out to everyone. We've got a couple more questions. So the first one is a feature called Timeline, which could record the whole activity of a phone user. Would there be safety concerns of our clients if they use the phone to communicate with us? So does anyone on the panel have experience with Timeline? No?
No, no, I don't.
Okay.
So
And
what is the concern that that this timeline is recording? Is it recording the phone conversation, or is it making a record that the phone call happened?
I think it's the whole conversation. They're referring
Okay.
to. Yeah.
Hmm.
So I
Well,
wonder if
that's something that I'm gonna follow up on as well, because we are using the phone a lot. The other thing I wanted to just mention, I know that this is about counseling, but when we decided to go with Zoom, we were also thinking about the other services that we offer, right? And sometimes, like for example, when we are doing housing work, when we're doing legal supports, and sometimes there is a need for clients to complete forms. So sharing the screen, for example, is a good idea for us to guide and for us to support the clients. Obviously, when we did our survey, we were able to identify the clients that are not in a safe space to be using technology. So for those clients, we are going to need to come up with a way to serve and support these women, because it's been almost a year, right?
Mhm.
And you know, they need the support. So perhaps as the situation with the pandemic changes, perhaps there are clients who will need to, you know, come in person for a level of support, and there are clients who are going to be fine, you know, getting supports from home.
So Carla, I have one final question with 1 minute to answer it. I heard that Zoom has updated its security progress. Can we put trust in Zoom?
Well, I'm not, okay, so we shouldn't be putting complete trust in any, but these companies are having to up their game, and are having to be more responsive to the security and safety needs of their clients. Yes, they're upping their game around security, around safety and privacy, because they know how critical it is for people's livelihood. So I will trust them to the extent that I'm going to also have to do my due diligence, right? We still need to have our own processes in place to ensure, to decrease, I guess, the risk. I don't know if that answers the question, but I'm never gonna say yes, I trust them, you know, 100%.
Yeah, I just also want to say that Zoom also, you know, remember that Zoom has a healthcare version of their platform, which I believe meets, or it goes towards meeting all the health, like providing services via, you know, like a clinic or anything like that. So just so you know that there's also that option. And I think each of these also, depending on your account, you can add features. So there's some customizability with each of these that you talk to your rep, and then they can customize and add features and that type of thing based on the level of your account.
Okay. Thank you. That's the end of the main presentation, and I want to thank our speakers and everyone for participating in today's webinar.